Well, we are certainly in a mental health pandemic of unprecedented proportions and with impact that I don't think we can comprehend or measure at this time. We just need solutions that are more durable. And traditional psychotherapy tends to stay in the realm of the mind. We need to get into the body.
Hello, you beautiful bluebirds, and welcome back to another episode of Deja Blu. We are sitting here in the Deja Blu set with one of my favorite humans on the planet. She is a highly educated individual, a dear sister of mine that has transversed through shamanic training over a whole year-long program with the Earth Temple of Shamanic Arts, and we got to drop in really deep and weave in our little pods and remember that. We were in a pod together for a while.
A long time.
And we really got to bond, but then outside of the shamanic training that we have gone through and the bonding that we have cultivated, this magnificent human being is also a ketamine-assisted therapist, an activist, a educator, as well as a host of online platforms in different education sort of modalities online, as well as creating content and videos that is so eloquently and gracefully, yet also comically and deeply delivering information for us through our little cellular devices plugged right into our home that is important information, educating us around these important topics that also have kind of become a little bit like taboo or being judged. And I think that you just bring such a beautiful way of delivering this information, and that's something that we're going to peel back today. But outside of all of those fancy labels of all the things that she does, she's just a fantastic human that has a huge heart, that genuinely has like a genuine desire to want to serve the planet and to educate the world and to illuminate us so that we can have a really epic generation to come for our future kids. So thanks for being here. Lauren House is in the building.
Oh my God, thank you for that epic introduction. I'm so excited to be here with you, Blue.
I mean, where else would you want to be but under a cherry blossom tree with a hanging mushroom?
Magic. Fairyland. Here we are.
A nice candle so it smells good. We've got some backlighting. And then we have a gem of a human being sitting in God's hands.
Two of them in your hands.
Well, yeah, if you don't mind, you should do, sweetheart. Right, two of us. 3, 4 of us. Lauren House, thanks for being here on Deja Blu Podcast.
It's
so grateful
an
for
honor.
you to be sharing your wisdom. And I just want to pick your brains today and open up this dialogue and this conversation about like what it is that you do in the world and what it is that feels like your mission. Now, that's a broad brushstroke of a question. So I'm going to like hone it in real quick. In the introduction, I introduced you as a ketamine-assisted therapist.
Yes.
Now, ketamine, some could know it as a horse tranquilizer. Some could know it as a drug. Some could know it as a medicine. Some may not know it at all. Will you please, my darling, under this cherry blossom tree in the hands of God, lit up by these beautiful lighting, surrounded by a magic mushroom and a salt lamp, will you please illuminate us with your wisdom around what it is that you do and the importance of this work?
Well, yes, I am a ketamine-assisted psychotherapist, and I'm a psychedelic-assisted psychotherapist. So I like to say that life is psychedelic. Like the whole thing is one big giant trip, right?
Big time.
Right? We come here and we're constantly being bombarded with new information through sensation, through this ride of being alive. And I also like to say that integration is a lifestyle. So my job as a therapist is to support people in integrating what it is that happens to them, period. And along the way, we develop all kinds of interesting patterns and habits that get really sticky. And some of them are really defensively and constructed and become problematic. So how we disrupt these patterns in order to awaken a person to the majesty of the life that's here is therapy, is shamanic. And my personal journey very much informs how I got into the job that I have. it's so fun. I love my work so much. It's like really the coolest job on the planet. And it's an immense privilege to bear witness to the breakdowns and breakthroughs and heart-opening, like heart-crushing experiences that are happening everywhere all the time, right? Life is full of pain and pleasure. How do we not get too attached to any of it? My own personal journey with my own healing and my own forgiving of my own parents' humanity brought me to therapy. And that healed me a lot, therapy. And it was also somewhat limited, right? Talk therapy tends to be overly cerebral. And I needed to get into my body because I was pretty dissociated as a younger person. And somehow along the way, someone invited me to some psychedelic journey, which petrified me. And I actually said no several times before I said yes. And whenever we're talking about psychedelics, a degree of fear is appropriate. One should have some, respect in that way.
And also discernment around it.
Right. We could talk about that. But my personal journey into psychedelic work healed me, hold me, showed me, growed me. And when I became aware of how that was dovetailing and weaving with therapy, which wasn't new at the time that I discovered it, and certainly isn't new as a practice, right? That there's something very shamanic about that, right? It's just a different language for a different cultural context. But I then became a student of these things. And my first training as a clinician, as a licensed clinical provider, was the MAPS training with MDMA. And I look forward to integrating MDMA into my practice. It's not yet legally available. It does have FDA breakthrough designation. It's something that is holding incredible promise for the treatment of complex PTSD. And everyone's got some kind of PTSD. It's like, what size is your font? How big? We all have it. It's part of this experience too. Now, out of the gates of that training, I have a dear friend who's a guiding light and a North Star for me. She said, Lauren, do a ketamine training. And I looked at her like she had 17 heads. Because I, too, like many people who may be listening to this conversation, had only understood ketamine through the lens of seeing it in recreational contexts, where people were pursuing the K-hole, if you will.
I've heard about the K-hole.
You've heard about it.
It sounds like Lucifer's lair. I'm like, I don't want to go in a K-hole. I saw someone on a K-hole once. So this is just like the lens, right?
Yeah,
from the outside
totally.
looking in, and I hear the word K-hole, and then I saw someone in a K-hole once, and I was like, what happened to this person? I said bye to them, and they just literally were like staring off. They couldn't even see me, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit. I was like, and then I was like, oh, and then later he was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I was in a K-hole, and I was like, what is a K-hole? And then it's when you do too much ketamine and you completely become disconnected with the room, and it kind of freaked me out. So this was my first impression of ketamine, just out in the streets, this is what I heard it to be called. And I was a K-hole, and I was like, I want to do everything but be in the K-hole.
Totally.
Terrifying. Anyway, carry on.
Totally. Thank you. And it's funny because I can feel myself now as a facilitator of this medicine, of this compound, I was like, whoa, Lucifer's lair.
No.
And also, yes, I have seen it used and abused. And it does have that, possibility. Anything is neutral. It's how and what we do with these things, right? So, and if someone is pursuing that degree of dissociation, blessings, compassion, compassion, right? Let's not be so judgy. And I was judgy. I judged it a lot.
I think that this is an amazing opportunity to create a bridge, right? From the preconceived notion of how I was first introduced to it to then actually the educated, structural, intentional, guided experience of it, which can completely transmute the narrative and the stories that have created the disconnect to the innocence of what actually it is.
And just to reiterate that I shared that narrative with you. I had a conversion story myself. And ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic. Yes, it's used in veterinary medicine. So yes, it is a horse tranquilizer.
How do they do that? Are they just in a dart?
I'm not a veterinarian, so I'm not exactly sure of the route of administration, but I would assume an injection.
Right. Yeah. In my head, I'm
like, how are they?
Down. Horse down.
There's the horse on the ground.
So archaic of me. I watch far too much Outlander.
Oh gosh,
everyone's just shooting darts.
I hear it's a great show. So ketamine is also very commonly used in pediatrics. So for children.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's an anesthetic that's globally used. It's considered a top 10 global medicine.
So it's got to be super safe.
Immensely, right? So when we're working with it in a clinical context for treatment-resistant depression, treatment-resistant anxiety, suicidality, and many other mental health conditions, people are often taking psychotropic medications, right? Now, other psychedelic medicines would be contraindicated for safe use. Ketamine is incredibly pliable in that way. There's few things that would make it unsafe for use. Now, within the clinical domain, and again, this is the only legal psychoactive substance at the current time within a Western medicalized system. So ketamine it's still quite the wild, wild west. And I'm excited to be, giddy up, right? I'm excited to be on a horse that's not on ketamine out there in the world, exploring the domain and offering the information and empowering other people to work with this particular tool in a safe and good way, right? So there are many different ways of working with ketamine. There are different routes of administration. You can either inhale it, so that's become popularized with Spravato, which I do not work with. There's lozenges, it's an oral application, or through intramuscular injections or IVs.
Oh, like a drip.
Now, the absorption rate is one of the primary differences in the route of administration. But dose, of course, is always important, right? Setting and dose with any psychedelic experience, whether that's whatever, setting and dose. Boom. Okay. Now, I tend to work in psychedelic dosing, and many other clinicians, friends of mine, work in psycholytic dosing. Let's talk about those two things. So psycholytic is essentially an anxiety-reducing dose. It functions like a social lubricant. So you'll take a small amount, perhaps in a therapy session, and the armoring drops. So people then have deeper levels of access to what's going on inside of them, right? There's a softening.
So it's like the defense mechanism melts a little bit, so that the actual piece that the defense mechanism is sort of trying to protect is allowed to be presented easier to then the resolve or the root of the issue to be transmuted easier.
Exactly. I work in higher doses with the intention to give a person a timeout from their ordinary mind. It's a real timeout, real break. And it's a round trip ticket. Like I said, as we've established, this is safe. So for people to have a very safe, deliberate disruption, like the story stops. And in fact, in a clinical context, psychedelic dosing of ketamine is the K-hole. I call that transformational space.
So it's not Lucifer's lair.
Not Lucifer's lair. No, it might be. It might. No. It's not Lucifer's lair.
Whatever story you put on it, right?
Right.
I like your story better than mine.
Yeah, that's right. And we need a disruption. People know where their problems are, often where they came from. And for whatever reason, getting from A to B is an impossible road. And for someone to have wait, there's something else. Now, the dosing is ego dissolving to some degree. So you might completely lose contact with your body, your sense of your egoic identity construction, what's happened to you, what your story is. And again, these are all dosed pieces, right? It's like how much medicine do you give someone? I don't always go that deep. But for someone who's preparing to die, it's a beautiful experience. It's a beautiful experience because they come back from that and say, wait, that wasn't so bad. Right? And one of my real passions in my work is death and dying. We're all going to do it.
Fun fact.
We're all going to do it.
We're all going to die.
Yo.
Oh, God.
Right?
Yay.
And I mean, having buried my sister and buried my mother, I've kind of sat with the death curriculum. And I forget it a lot. But when I remember, there's no bigger invitation to life. There's no bigger invitation. And people, I mean, in this culture, like we want to shut it behind closed doors and pretend it doesn't happen. And when someone dies, people, want the story to be over in about a week. Carry on. So anyway, the heavier kind of, the deeper ketamine dosing can be really good for end-of-life care. And it's also one of the most effective treatments for suicidality.
For what?
Suicidality.
Interesting.
Yeah. Some people really need a break from the story in order to come back with more softness towards themselves.
Right. Usually because the same mindset that got you into it is not necessarily going to be the same mindset that creates like the break in the biofeedback loop. So it's the pattern interrupt that allows to see a different lens and perspective, which then allows a new narrative to be created and then an old loop to be transmuted.
Totally. And in the psychedelic dosing, there's a similar quality as to the psycholytic dosing, because my sessions are 3 hours, right? So the first hour we're preparing, the second hour, the medicine lasts 45 to 75 minutes. Person goes in, right? And I'm in that time very present with the individual and very aware of breath pattern shifting, any words that he or she may say, and tracking. Third hour is the beginning of integration, right? We talk about meaning, make, anchor. Oftentimes repressed memory surfaces. People are certainly in a disarmed space and place. And the neuroplasticity that the medicine also activates makes for the next 24 to 36 hours to be like golden time to do some big psychotherapeutic work. So I like to have a therapy session following a ketamine session, right? Like the next day. Because truly the medicine does create new neural pathways. That's a fact. That's science. And how do we take advantage of that like pliable, flexible space in the brain in order to anchor shifts and shed, right? Whatever needs to kind of shape shift for a person to live better inside their own bodies, hearts, and minds. How do they relate in a good way across the board? So ketamine is a tool. It should never be more than like 10% of a treatment plan, right? People think drugs are the answer. They're not. Shocker, right? And people are afraid of drugs too. Like, and that for that conversation, like everyone's doing drugs. Everyone's doing some kind of drug. People are on Advil. People are like drinking coffee, chocolate.
The whole thing. I had some drugs this morning for breakfast, aka piece of chocolate.
Same.
What was yours?
Coffee. It was so good.
Oh shit! Where's your face?
Yeah.
This is, for me, this is so important, is to go, okay, completely uneducated or misaligned perspective of exhibit A. For in this sense, ketamine. Okay. And exhibit A would be, saw someone in a K-hole, didn't understand it, my judgment of not understanding it, then priced on Lucifer's lair, never want to go there. Every time someone says ketamine, I go big red X in my mind that goes, gang! Really, this is actually coming from an uneducated, judgmental perspective of what I don't understand, I'm going to judge. Okay, so then that also says how my brain is set up, goes, hey, instead of shying away, go deeper. I go deeper into the conversation. This is for me, all of what 2022 is about, is going like, hey, someone says something that like didn't resonate with me, but instead of me like playing smaller in that area that they were triggered by, actually the invitation is go deeper into my understanding and my why behind it. So in this area of psychedelics and having these conversations, this has been such a huge theme in Deja Blu. Also with you being in this line of work and this being your job, wanting to bring, hey, ketamine, you have a seat at the table. Let's talk about you from an educated perspective so that we can transmute this dogma around it and actually recognize that. And we can segue into this of like the mental health crisis that's happening on the planet and how we need tools to support us in safe ways, in guided ways, in intentional ways, in educated ways that are allowing us to be able to heal, instead of creating all of this dogma and then suffering in silence and then turning to drugs that are not necessarily in the setting that's actually going to support us to heal and actually taking us further into the numb state. So there's two different sort of experiences that can be processed through mental illness, and I want to talk about it, right? Like I want to uncover the layers, and I want to see how you feel like with the mental health crisis, specifically since COVID that has happened, where everyone's got to stay inside and there's like lacking that human connection, and then they're really facing off with everything that's going on in their own mind. How can this go hand in hand with those individuals that are suffering so deeply and just really need, I feel like suffering just needs extra care and love and attention, not ostracizing and outcasting.
Well, we are certainly in a mental health pandemic of unprecedented proportions and with impact that I don't think we can comprehend or measure at this time. I and every other therapist that I know we're busy. We're busy. And in fact, over the last 2 years, I've been so busy, I forgot to really take really good care of myself. And people reach out all the time for support. Like the level of need and demand is mind blowing. Mm-hmm. And I don't like say that the inflows to me are because I'm so great, but it's like there is so much need. And you can't insert drugs or psychedelics into the system and just expect for the system to change, right? Like we need to look at how we're living and the reality of disconnection. Mm-hmm. And that in many ways I think predates COVID. Mm-hmm. But then in COVID, like people are really, really have been scared, have lost their jobs, have not been able to see their loved ones, had the break of going out to work, right? And depression, anxiety, sickness, right, is everywhere. In my mind, we just need solutions that are more durable. Mm-hmm. And traditional psychotherapy tends to stay in the realm of the mind, in the realm of like cognition and intellect. And we need to talk about things. Like there's great merit in sharing your story. And there's a lot of like shame reduction that happens when you tell the truth, and empowerment that happens when you really speak what's alive. And simultaneously, if you're not shifting your nervous system, if you're not shifting the traumatic content, whatever it is, on the cellular level, then the changes aren't going to be sustained or very meaningful, right? So talk, and keep talking. Like do keep talking, right? We need to get into the body. I, as an educator and an activist, also believe in the application of other medicines. I believe in the compounds. I believe in MDMA for the treatment of complex PTSD more than any other psychedelic, more than any other one. I believe in LSD. I believe in ketamine. I believe in the other like 3-MMC, these molecules that have been developed in labs. Thank you, labs. Thank you, scientists. Like the level of beauty and divinity that human hands have created. Thank you. And yes to the plants. Oh my gosh. Thank you, psilocybin. Thank you, ayahuasca. Thank you, San Pedro. Thank you. And a lot of my work too in the space of education is to build bridges in the worlds of plant medicine people who may have a lot of judgment about Lucifer's lair over here with my medicine cabinet, right? And like you said, they're not going deep enough. They don't know. Maybe it scares them. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know who they are, but right. My experience has been quite a lot of judgment.
I mean, ultimately, just from experiencing both sides, it's really just being uneducated, and there's not enough platforms to plug into this level of education that is going to be shared. It's not spread far and wide. It's not a conversation that is a general conversation. And so because it's being uneducated around the topic, then it creates a lot of gray area and room for judgment.
And fear, right? So the reality is our collective way of thinking about drugs is informed by racist policy, period. And not so long ago, you could buy cocaine and opiates at your local high street. And the ways in which we've constructed drugs in our kind of cultural lexicon is bad, right? We've scheduled them in the medical texts in a certain way. And so we're scared and we have judgment and we don't know. We're not going deep enough. Actually, over New Year's, I had a whole big thing with judgment myself and recognizing that anytime I'm judging anyone or anything, something is diseased inside of me. Mm-hmm. And can I be with what that is? Mm-hmm. Take the U-turn, that YO U-turn over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Can I attend and befriend to what it is that's happening inside of me? Because that's the solution, period. Mm-hmm. Psychedelics can make it a little easier when they're stewarded well, but also not the solution. One of the things that I like to focus on in my work is generational psychedelic work. Mm-hmm. And with the understanding that part of the problem in our culture is the family's been decimated, right? The family system, the communal system. Mm-hmm. I live in one of the most community-based cities or neighborhoods in Los Angeles. I don't know most of my neighbors' names. That's weird. And the fundamental relationship that we learn as children is disintegrating. So how do we get back, I think, on some level to family? And how do we bring this conversation? You said we don't have these conversations. How do we have these conversations with our families? Mm-hmm. I think that's important.
It's important, and also it's difficult to have these conversations with our family if we're not educated on it, right? Because totally. The family are going to really want to, just from my experience, are really going to want to understand the science behind it, right? They're going to want to understand the facts. And just to go to the family and be like, yeah, but I had a really good time, is just not enough.
Yes.
To really crack open the conversation, to even create it as a deeper level of listening on both paths. And so this is, again, it comes back to the education. And simultaneously, there is a deep need for us to learn how to build bridges between us and the older generation that have been through the war on drugs and have created a whole mental overlay around these certain pieces and kind of scheduled it all into the same category. And then we come in with the new generation with new insight and new science, and yet it is a responsibility to build a bridge through education.
Yes.
That can invite others and speak their language, as opposed to just being well, this is just how it is. And kind of it actually feeds more division, and it doesn't allow a level of intimacy and a level of understanding to actually be established.
Well, the family piece is obviously very alive for both of us and for different reasons. And I had the privilege and true honor to convert my father to psychedelics. And that happened in his 70s. And my dad's a guy that smoked marijuana twice in the 70s and didn't like it and doesn't drink alcohol. And is a very conservative, Western medical doctor who was very controlling and very righteous and very much looked at drugs based on how they were medically scheduled. And was, quite frankly, horrified when I shared with him that I was engaging in psychedelic work. And education. Right? He educated himself. He tracked the research and came to understand the clinical applications. Mm-hmm. And wasn't enough to kind of get him over the line into his own kind of experiencing, but eventually he did. And the level of transformation that I've witnessed in my father in 2 years of his own journey work is astounding. and the level of transmutation that has resulted in response to that in our relationship and in the family system that I come from is unbelievable. And I know that my mother would have been alive longer if she had access to specifically MDMA-assisted psychotherapy. And so I work for my mom.
Was it depression?
My mom?
Yeah.
My mom had a lot of trauma, a lot of early childhood abuse. And
it hadn't been addressed. And
it was addressed with a lot of expensive treatments that didn't work and often re-traumatized her. So
re-traumatized.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, here's the thing, too. The medical system, in its best intentions, has been very harmful to a lot of people struggling with mental health, right? There are so many people whose bodies are processing their trauma and they're sedated, right? Embodied catharsis looks psychotic. People need to scream and shout and shake and sweat, and it's a whole thing. We're educated that emotions should be polite, and we're educated like, don't be scared. No, I'm scared. Thank you, opportunity for courage. But like, we're educated not to feel, and we're educated to cut off from our own somatic wisdom. And so there's harm that happens in the medical system. My mother had a lot of treatment and it all failed miserably. And when we talk about like treatment-resistant depression or treatment-resistant anxiety, and we talk about that a lot because there's a lot of it, it doesn't mean that the client or the patient is resisting. It means that the treatment isn't good enough, that the clinician is like there's something that's not working. Like, we fracture and develop these, mental health problems when our internal resourcing is overwhelmed by the happenings of our lives. When the window of opportunities like collapsed, we shatter. And as little ones, we choose to fit in rather than belong, and we cut off again from ourselves. And we keep cutting off and cutting off and cutting off. And of course that's depressing. And of course that's like anxiety provoking. The world isn't safe because you're not safe inside. So the journey back home can be immensely supported with psychoactive compounds. But again, I think another piece I like to stress is the relationship. In Indigenous communities, thank you, that have pioneered this work for eons, for someone to sit in a ceremony, a psychedelic ceremony, and not have a context to make sense of it, to be supported in the practice of it, right? Because it's a mistake to think that more drugs will give you the answer and make you better. Like, that's not it. And these experiences, like, maybe they just become amusement park rides for the mind. Maybe maybe a person develops a codependent relationship with it. But the goal is for this dimension to feel really good. And to feel like one where you can navigate whatever it is that shows up because you have your ecosystem solid. You're connected. You're plugged in to people who love you, to your own heart, first and foremost. But you're good. Like, you can ride the tides of pain and pleasure. You can go there. And if you're struggling, you share language of someone where you have the permission to struggle.
I feel like no matter what we can have in this world, like everything in the 3D, what I mean by the 3D is just this physical reality. We can have, the partner and the beautiful home and the lovely job. However, if there's this piece, there is this chunk that happened, for example, at the age of 15 years old, where there was a sexual assault that has created a defense mechanism to do anything but to feel it. And every time we go close to that feeling, we get very numb. So we continue to kind of just gloss it over and then just live in this experience, but then wonder why do I feel sad? Or why do I feel depressed? Or why do I feel anxiety? When everything in my immediate reality is so good, I have everything going for me. But what this piece can create is a lens or a film over our experience that is distorting and tainting the gift of our reality. So there needs to be some sort of form of shamanic, somatic, assisted guide to segue us or to guide us home into this piece and to actually work through it in a educated, guided, and safe way to allow us to then come back to our reality and to clean off the lens of the fog and the distortion to receive the gift of what it means to be sober here and now in our waking everyday experience. And so there is that conversation of, well, it can be overused, there can be create a codependency on it, which is actually numbing us away from our reality. Or there is a conversation of, hey, this is needed to address this piece so you can receive the gifts of what it truly means to be human in your sober state, in your waking reality. And there are ways and educated ways that can support you to go into this place so that the outcome doesn't have to be the outcome of what happened with your mother. Mm-hmm. And it's so beautiful to hear you say, I work for my mother. Mm-hmm. It is because what it feels like is such an honoring of her life that you have devoted your life to being the person that you wish your mother had. Mm-hmm. And for showing up and serving others that are really going through, you know, this challenging and very lonely and isolating experience of mental health. Mm. Because mental health issues are invisible, mm-hmm. right? You can't see them from the naked eye. You can't just go out and be like, oh, that person has mental health issue. They can be completely put together and saying all the right things and slap a smile on their face and inside be like completely freaking out. And so it's very isolating and it can be a very lonely experience. And so having these spaces, I just think that the world needs more safe spaces to feel. Mm-hmm. And ketamine is a tool in which can support us to actually feel what we've not given ourselves permission to feel because it hasn't been safe for 20 years mm-hmm. to actually feel it so that we can live in this world and receive the gifts that are around us, receive the gifts of our beloved or our friends when we're having a conversation and not have to go off on a tangent in our mind and create a split personality that is disassociating from what's actually happening because I'm still running a process of something that isn't resolved.
Mm-hmm. So many things you said that are resonating for me. I mean, I also work for like little Lauren, like my little kid self who, you know, was in pain because my mom was quite dissociated, right? And I work for all the families. I work for families, and I work for families with a felt and known sense that change is possible and that healing is real, and that the time is now. Like, game on, we're going. Like, this is like we're on the clock, and yes, like I said earlier, trauma is part of the human experience because the reality is separation is illusion, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens in my backyard also affects me. And what happened to my mother also affects me. And there's trauma in my backyard. There's the level of homelessness and untreated psychosis in this neighborhood is palpable. And it hits my nervous system in the evenings when I'm walking alone or when I'm walking and someone's, you know, having an episode. Like, I feel that. And I don't want to not feel it, right? Because that's a numbing. Mm-hmm. We have to really kind of shut off and shut down to not feel that. And the realm of psychedelic healing immediately opens us to the reality of transpersonal, collective, and intergenerational work. And all of a sudden, we are no longer operating in the idea that it's just my ego. It's just me, Lauren, having this experience in the world. There's a whole lot more going on here. And there's so much hope, right? I had a call with a group of doctors and therapists that I team with about suffering and how difficult it can be at times to make sense of certain experiences, life experiences. And, you mentioned the example of someone who may have all of the things and be broken inside. And then there's people who have none of the things. Nothing. And trauma, right? And then there's people who have nothing and have quite a lot too. There's all of it. And how do we make sense? How do we make meaning or not, right? Everything is a miracle or nothing is. Thank you, Einstein. And to feel connection, I think that's the whole thing. Mm-hmm. To know that you're part of something. Mm-hmm. And that's so much of what I consider my job to be. It's connecting to my clients. I don't work with medicine with people if I don't know who's who in their zoo, if I don't know where they're looking to go and grow, like, again, 10% of the treatment plan. But when I go into relationship with the client, I need to like them a lot. If I don't like my client, I'm not the right clinician for them. So all of my clients, I love. And it's a pleasure to spend time with them and to know them and to feel with them. When we work with medicine, well, first of all, back to the relational piece, they know I love them. Mm-hmm. My clients know that I care for them. And that's big medicine. Right? The word love needs a lot of rehabilitation in the therapy space. Carl Jung called it unconditional positive regard. Thank you for that language. And I love my clients. Love is a bastardized, like sexualized, unsafe, not boundaried word, right? In therapy, you're not supposed to love your clients. So I know, but I reject that, and I'm happy to tell them that I love them and I can love with boundaries, and I do. And that sense of like, oh, like someone really cares about me, someone sees me, someone hears me, creates a big shift by itself. Then you bring the medicine in, and I invite people to be in relationship with the medicine, right? Like, even if they're getting an injection, do you want to put some an intention on the medicine and the injection? Like, and with the prayer that this medicine can be partnered with, not just used or taken, partnered with for perspective shifting, mind opening, soul revealing, psychedelic experiencing, which is life again. Such that the lens looks different, right? And whatever pain that may be avoided, wherever the trauma happened and the person's stuck, like they're trapped there in hypervigilance and it's like painting the whole of their life, can be like worked on and transmuted and then integrated. But it's all relational. Relationship to the pain, to the self, to the ones around, to the caregiver.
I want to go into the conversation around side effects.
Okay.
Because, speaking of like playing the devil's advocate,
Great.
right? It's coming in from the lens of that this is a drug or that this is classed right. And we've talked about this, but I'm really working on seeing from different lenses, just not my own.
Yeah.
And to see it from like maybe even going into, the perspective of my parents and how they would be listening in on this conversation.
Hope they do.
Like curious to peel back the layers. I want to understand a little bit about, there's two pieces, side effects. Mm-hmm. And actually, I guess there's three pieces, and I guess I can prompt you on them if you forget what. The side effects of ketamine, what's happening in the brain, and why children? Like, because you said it's also worked with with children, and I'm curious about that topic too. So I guess there's three questions just sort of bundled together, but I guess we could go sort of into the side effects of it.
So I work with a team of medical doctors. Mm-hmm. At this point, my father is my primary squeeze MD. Mm. And so I'll do my best to answer these questions, but I'm the therapist, not the doctor.
Okay.
I screen for anything that would be problematic. A person is not going to be working with ketamine as part of their treatment plan if there's anything that's going to be problematic about their particular engagement with this compound. It's a dissociative anesthetic that's used in hospitals with regards to pediatrics. With children, it's really effective and it's really safe and it's really easy. It's quick, short-lasting. Side effects, like if a person abuses it, there can be side effects. If a person's actively engaged in an addiction with ketamine, there can be like more severe body-based side effects. When you're working with it in a safe clinical capacity, I do 1 session a week for 6 weeks usually. Some people do 2 sessions or 3 sessions in a week, no problem. You're going to be a little groggy afterwards. You're not going to drive a car. You might purge. Highly uncommon, but it happens. People often have to pee a lot. Very benign. Now, I mentioned like there's problems that happen if you abuse ketamine. Ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic. Okay? Leave? Numb. Great drug. Great drug for anybody flirting with an addiction. Leave? Numb. Addiction. Now, people are addicted to many, many, many things. And when someone's addicted to drugs, yes, there's like brain chemistry happening that develops further, dependency on the actual compound, whatever it may be. But ask not why the drug addiction, ask why the pain. Be more curious. Go deeper. It's not about the drug. The drug is doing something for the person, and thank you for the drug because it's helping a person cope with what feels unmanageable. And they have a right to choose that. They have a right to choose that. Now, I hope and pray and work for people to have inner resourcing to manage whatever it is that they're getting away from. Let's clean the lenses. I love that analogy. But ketamine has problematic stuff for sure when you're like abusing it. Otherwise, it's like safe. It's safe. It's like if you're getting a surgery in a hospital, I don't know about you. I know we're a little bit different, but I want anesthesia. If someone's gonna like cut me open, I would like some anesthesia, please. Okay?
I don't want to be awake.
Ouch. Also?
No.
So there's like now any of the ketamine that I'm serving is sub-anesthetic. I'm not going into an anesthetic dose, right? You're going to take a lot more for it to work in that way. I'm sure I'm missing things. And again, like I don't have like the doctor lexicon for it.
And it's an acknowledgement of you being a therapist, not a doctor.
Correct.
And, whatever information that you do have on it, is powerful to hear, as well as also acknowledging that you work one-on-one with doctors.
Yeah. And my doctors are screening. And again, the beauty of ketamine, is that it is a legal psychoactive. Okay. So we need, anyone can agree that if you've got like a consistent mental, like a thought pattern, and it keeps going, it's maybe going for years and years and years. Same one. Like really, really exhausting. Have you ever had one of those? Me too. It's exhausting. We need a disruption and a break from it. And that can be provided here. So ketamine is legal and it's safe. Why is it used in pediatrics? Because it's safe.
So what would be a situation for a child to need ketamine?
They need a little surgery. They're having a
Dental
procedure.
Stuff or?
Not really mental stuff. No. I mean, the youngest I've worked with is 18, 17. I'm talking about for the medical application of ketamine as a compound.
Not as a dental.
Pardon?
Dental, not mental.
I said dental?
No, I said like for dental. Work.
Sure.
Okay. All right. I think you thought I said mental.
Yeah.
And then you said like not unless they're like 18 plus. But I'm saying like if they're having like dental procedure or something, or they have to have teeth extracted or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if dentists specifically do work with it. I know it's more like hospital applications. By the way, it also has a long history on battlefields to
interesting, really?
because they could numb someone enough to get them off the field.
Oh,
right? Safe. Like it's easy to work with, and it has many different applications. And you find it in hospitals around the world. Around the world.
And so if you went to the doctor, and what would be the certain, if you were like 18 or over, and what would be the certain circumstance that
procedures?
would have
It's going to be procedures. You're not going to be prescribed ketamine for take home.
Okay.
It's going to be like,
that's not a thing.
No. Okay. Now, in my field, it's a thing. Clinicians will give, and I have a lot of opinions about this. But okay, so to be clear, to answer the question, the ketamine that is used medically in the world, largely, I would say, is procedural, is in hospitals for different kinds of surgeries, and commonly for that with children. The off-label use of ketamine, which is happening for mental health, it's off-label.
Interesting.
Okay. That's where we're talking mental health. Now, there are a lot of providers and even big, well-funded companies that are giving people ketamine for at-home use.
For what?
At-home use. So my clients all will be in session with me when they're working with ketamine. I have a few clients on microdosing protocols with ketamine. To manage some of the resistant anxiety. It can be really supportive, really micro. Also, it's been really helpful for severe PMS. Research around that. Also, it's great for OCD. It's great for postpartum depression because it's out of the breast milk quickly. Like a mother can still breastfeed. Sorry, I'm getting excited about these sidebar like applications as I think about this. But where were we? Spinning my wheels over here. It's the at-home prescriptions can be good for people in terms of widening access, right? And making these kinds of treatments more affordable. And in that way, people are given like instructions for how to do this. Some, I believe, are not actually given care, and that concerns me. But to answer your question, hospitals, procedural, off-label use, mental health, different routes of administration. Some people are getting this for take-home. I believe that the take-home model has promise and also a lot of peril. I'm concerned about people abusing it. I think that there will be fallout around that. Again, dissociative anesthetic.
I feel like with anything, whether it's sugar or alcohol, cigarettes, or magic mushrooms, or ayahuasca, there's so many different experiences happening within the consciousness of the plant or the consciousness of the medicine or the consciousness of the drug. And ultimately, you know, if you are in the hospital and you've just had like a leg amputated and they're giving you morphine, it's like so needed and so important because of the pain levels.
Yeah.
And then you've got someone, you know, that is really struggling and they're feeling really isolated and they're shooting heroin at home, and it is a completely different experience of the same thing.
Yes.
Ultimately, the thing itself is subjective.
Correct.
So whether we talk about ketamine or we talk about sugar, it's really the relationship to it.
Yes.
The why behind it, the intention and the safety and education of the use. And so inevitably, it's happening.
Yes.
The experience of heroin is happening. The experience of crack cocaine is happening. The experience
and like heroin and cocaine are also plant-based medicines. Alcohol, plant-based medicine, like from the plants. And so neutral, to your point, all of these things are neutral. It's how we do what we do with these things that determines like what it is.
Which is why I think just talking about these subjects and education around these subjects and education being available without it just going, it's bad, bang, and then we don't talk about it. This actually is, I think, one of the bridges that need to be built so that we can actually have educated conversations and to create educated decision making around these things, as opposed to just creating more division within those that are suffering, that are working with these or taking them, and continuing to create more disconnect and dissonance and mental health issues. So it's just a really important conversation. And I want to acknowledge you for devoting your life's work to have these uncomfortable conversations and to break through taboos and to break through stigmas around certain things and to educate us in a way that can support us to be able to utilize and work with these tools in a way that's going to actually heal our relationship to the now and heal our relationship to ourselves, which ultimately then creates a fabric of experiences with our relationship with our friends or our family or our beloved or our service. Like, it infiltrates everything as our relationship to ourselves. And if our relationship to ourselves is really in a tough place and we are not educated around the tools that can support us, we're going to make uneducated decisions that can actually harm us in a longer run.
And other people. And other people, right? And to me, it's interesting. I would have never expected my life to be what it is and my work really to be what it is. I spent so much of my life being good. And like my father, we were both really good. And drugs weren't on that list. You know, I was not engaging in any of that. And you know, it's my clinical training years, I focused on addiction because I had an eating disorder and that was an addictive process for me. And I did my clinical training years in an inpatient drug and alcohol treatment facility that was populated by people as an alternative to incarceration. So I was working with the prison population and drugs. Now, that, Blu, was a bad trip. That was the worst trip I've ever been on, and I haven't come back from it. Because I came to really feel at a front row seat to the systemic injustice and how it dances with drugs. Right? Any drug conversation is a social justice conversation and an international one. So there's a massive subcurrent going on. And the war on drugs, which this country has spent $1 trillion on, hasn't...
$1 trillion?
$1 trillion.
I literally cannot fathom how much $1 trillion.
I can't either.
Like, when I was a kid, I was like, $1 trillion, and I was like, that's just the biggest thing that I can say.
Right?
Like, I still, as an adult, nothing has matured in the sense that I cannot fathom $1 trillion. Like, what the fuck?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so $1 trillion has been spent on the war on drugs.
Yeah, the war on drugs. And consumption has remained unaltered.
Okay, so $1 trillion later, the consumption levels have stayed the same.
That's right.
As the trillion, before the trillion came in.
Before the trillion came in. Now,
so the trillion went where exactly?
I mean, police, education campaigns, prisons, right? And, you know, I remember some of my early clients were in a cycle of recidivism that would likely repeat for the rest of their existence. And there's like white billionaires, not trillionaire, but billionaires based on cannabis, right? So we need to just get into reality about what is going on here. And legalizing drugs, which I'm an advocate for. I'm an advocate for full legalization. Why? Because if somebody is involved in an addictive process, and many are, the current system stigmatizes them and obstructs them from getting the care that they need to explore getting well, right? And the current system is imprisoning people for living their lives. Like we can do whatever we want. I mean, we should give each other sovereignty to decide what we put into our bodies. And the level of harm that's been done to communities, specifically of color, is, I don't have words for it. Mm-hmm. So legalizing like gets people the help that they need. Mm-hmm. If someone in your family, right, was really suffering from like an addiction to an illegal drug, what kind of care would you want them to have? What kind of like consideration would you want them to have? They're just a junkie, drug addict, like crackhead. So dehumanizing. Mm-hmm. What's going on with that person? What are they numbing? Mm-hmm. What happened? When did the lens shift? Mm-hmm. What happened? And yeah, I mean, we need to do a lot better here. And we need to work with these things in the ways that work well in order to unlock like more healing and happiness. By the way, happiness for me is totally a function of our ability to play the rest of the emotional keyboard. Like I have a full-on grief practice. I cry multiple times a week. And when it's been a few days and I haven't cried, I'm like a little edgy. And it releases the pressure valve. And then I'm like, yeah, back. Like, to feel the grief, to feel the anger, like, right? And anger is a big one for people. I had good lessons with anger last year. It was fun. To feel the fear, right? That is how we access our joy, right? When we start being like, no, those emotions are not okay, then all of a sudden we're not breathing so well. We're certainly not feeling so well.
What you just said, I think it creates a level of personal responsibility of, I think a lot of us, the majority of us can relate to somebody that we know or a family member that has had or does currently have challenge with illegal drugs. And it is the general consensus in my lens of reality is when somebody is experiencing that, then they get like ostracized or cast out.
Yes.
And it goes as deep as the drug itself, and therefore it's bad and we can't have you around. Which actually there is a deeper layer here that's being uncovered with what you share. And something that I feel very dear to my heart is the why behind the dependence on that thing, which is really just pain.
Yes.
And a disconnect within one's being. And so what's happening is it's continuing a self-fulfilling prophecy of I feel lonely or I feel disconnected, for example, and then numbing that out, and then that being experienced from others of being like casting that person out, which then feeds that thing loop. That feeds the biofeedback loop to then continue to drag it to grab the thing that numbs us out, to eventually we end up killing ourselves, or it can really create a lot of damage for the immediate family of that individual. Now, there's a level of responsibility when you said we get to do better. And I think that level of responsibility is to tune in right now in this moment and ask ourselves, is there somebody that is in my immediate field or extended field? And what I mean by field is connection web, whether it's my family or a friend of a friend that is experiencing addiction through drugs. And how can I soften my compassion for that individual and the pain behind the use of the drugs? And how can I drop my judgment for that individual and bring in the human essence back, as opposed to dehumanizing by just casting them out? But what role do I play? Because ultimately we are responsible for everything in our lives, and how we respond to it is our responsibility. How can I shift the narrative into a deeper level of empathy? Now, you said with your clients, one of the biggest pieces of the therapy is to love them, and for them to come to a place where they haven't been able to experience this level of connection or love anywhere in their lives, and to come and be able to work with someone that genuinely cares about them. And I think that what makes you such a powerful space holder as baseline of what you do is the genuine care for the individual, and also not needing to change them, but necessarily supporting them and accepting them where they're at and asking the questions, do you wish to change? And I can support you in that. So it's a difference of being like, well, we need to change you. Or I accept you just the way that you are, and everything that you share with me is not going to be judged. Do you wish to change because the suffering is creating for yourself? Okay, we agree upon that. And then here I have some tools to guide you. Now that's the energetic difference of transformation, because transformation cannot be founded upon shame. And this is the responsibility here, is where am I shaming people, even if it's just through my thoughts, because of the suffering that they're experiencing.
The energetic impact of that, right?
Our thoughts contribute to these connections, whether you're saying something or not. 93% of communication is nonverbal. So there's a responsibility of going beyond just what I'm saying to this person, but actually, and how am I actually processing their reality inside my head when I am in their presence is my responsibility. And I've learned with my family that none of us do things the same way. We all have different lenses. That's what also makes it pretty magical. And the way that I have created intimacy within my family unit is to just accept them as they are. When my brother comes to me and he's challenged or he's going through something, is not to try and change him based off the tools that I have learned that supported me to alleviate my suffering, but to just love him and be like, all right, Persky, is there anything I can support with you? Okay. And in my thoughts to filter out, am I judging him? Am I trying to change him? Am I trying to save him? Or am I here to accept him?
And if there is that judgment for those who might be thinking about loved ones in their lives who come with problems or come with addictions, like what's it like for you to just witness it? And what comes up, right? It's probably a commingling of grief and fear for them, maybe anger. And can you be with that instead of the judgment?
Which is the healing.
Yeah. And it's the individual healing.
Yeah.
Right? Because, it doesn't feel good for me to judge. I do it. I know I judge. And when I'm judging, I'm like, wow, that sucks. Right? Like I'm uncomfortable. Like, and it's also like, you can't avoid the discomfort. And it's, again, like, can people just feel more and get past the conditioning again that has us believing that it's not okay to feel, that it's unsafe, that it's uncouth, that it's whatever, right? It's and that conditioning so deep, it's not even conscious, right? When I'm getting bored with the client, it's because they're not going deep enough, and it's probably because they're like armored. They built these walls to protect themselves. And what I want to say too, because I don't think I said it, and I think it's important just to name, is that like all of these, get back to the neutrality of the thing. Some of these drugs are some of the most effective interventions for some of the biggest mental health problems we have on the planet. And addictions included, right? Like Bill Wilson, who founded Alcoholics Anonymous, advocated for the use of LSD well after the inception of AA. It wasn't well received, but it was something that he did to help him with his depression in his sobriety. And it was effective. LSD. Acid, right? And, mushrooms, one of the biggest tools for supporting people in.
I have it on my set for a reason, family.
Right? For getting people off tobacco addiction. Ibogaine for opiates. Ketamine for treatment-resistant depression, anxiety, suicidality, and epic, like I said, for end-of-life care. And again, we're all going to die. We all going to peace out eventually. So exciting to think about how we might apply some of these different compounds and plants to alleviate the suffering, to like shape shift, to get people into new realities, new stories, which is hard. And again, it's treatment resistant because we're not treating well enough. Me, us, my people, you know, and if we can find good partners in others or in psychoactives, like I'm a full yes to that. And I know from the research, and I know from my experience, and I know from my clients, and I know from my family. And I brought this work to my family system, and it has been an incredible explosion of beauty and goodness and magic and intimacy and love that would have never happened without drugs. Cool.
That's a first-hand experience. That's a first-hand experience in your immediate family.
Yes.
With somebody that was fully founded on a scientific approach and a rigidity, and experiencing disconnect. And now you're experiencing the other side of the coin here. This is it's a very, 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 very potent and layered conversation. And it requires a mental amount of courage for you to devote your life's work into bringing this forward and to educating us, and also opening up the personal experience of your family and the impact and the results that you are receiving. And it's really deeply felt, right? Because once it's embodied and it's actually been processed through your own personal experience with your family, then it's a whole different narrative and it's a different ballgame. So if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, wow, I really resonate with, this is my family, or just like these pieces within myself, and I feel like there's PTSD that runs through my body, or I was a veteran in the war or something like this. Do you have any suggestions? Because of course there's only one of you, right? You only have so much time. And a lot of our time when we were in the shamanic training was the initiation of Lauren time. Like you're like, I just want to keep serving and I love it, but I'm also running on empty and I need to like have my own time. So without like this podcast piling too much work on you, right? Because what I've noticed with these podcasts is whether my guest has a service, has an offering, all of a sudden there's a lot of energy that goes towards that person. So I would love for you, if someone is, listening to this and they really resonate with this conversation and they're really calling in some guidance and some support, are there places that they can go to for psychotherapy assisted, medicine work or ketamine that you would suggest or recommend? And then also, is there anything that you're personally offering where people can become more educated on this topic?
And thank you for doing what you do. Oh my gosh, what a gift to weave together. I love you so much. Love, love, love. Yes. First of all, if you're interested in cultivating more relationship with yourself, find a therapist. And, there's Psychology Today that has a whole host of them. Interview your therapist. Like, make sure that it's the right person for you. This is human chemistry as well. And you might, along the way, find someone who's also working with medicine. If you're looking specifically for someone with ketamine work, I would suggest, or psychedelic work, MAPS. MAPS has a directory. I'm on it. Many other colleagues of mine, people that I love, are on it, maps.org. Also, Psychedelic Support is another directory. I recommend How to Change Your Mind as a beginner's book on psychedelic medicine. And have conversations with people and Google. But always, if you're going to be working with someone, big invitation to interview them and make sure that they feel good for you. Make sure that they feel like trained enough, kind enough, aligned enough to be the one to guide you into your own heart. And reminder that you are your own best healer.
That's beautiful. Shifted the lens of going like, oh, I hope this therapist accepts me, into actually, no, I must do call in somebody that is aligned so that I can soften enough to be able to pull out the gold that is needed to be to be addressed and transformed, as opposed to sort of like, I hope this person accepts me, and then all of a sudden realizing that we've made it in a contract or an agreement with someone that actually doesn't feel like the person that's really going to be able to help us take our guard down. So that's a really important piece in all of this. And then I'm guessing you're fully booked personally.
As for me, I am expanding my practice with other clinicians. So you can find me on my website, embodiedlife.com. I have a really great group of people doing beautiful, beautiful assisted work. I also have a training if you're a clinician, if you're a licensed provider and are interested in learning more about how to do this work. Join me. I have trainings. I'm also exploring family retreats. So yeah.
Wow, really, that's some deep work.
I'm ready. I'm ready, girl. Let's go. Let's grow. Let's do it.
The time is now.
The time is now. Follow me on the IG, lauren.taus. I like to post educational stuff and just share my play and my rituals. I like the word rich, R-I-C-H, because true wealth is always internally sourced. So we're on rituals. And come play.
What I really appreciate, I mean, I sort of like, fanned your flames a little bit, quite a little bit on this podcast, but like what I really love is the conversation between that you have gone into the depth of the shamanic realm, right? We've done this together, and you've done work outside of the stuff that we've done together around the shamanic piece, the spirituality piece, the yoga, the practice, the morning devotional practice, the journaling, and everything else that you do, while simultaneously also understanding from a scientific perspective and an educated perspective, and working with doctors in this field. And so it's a really powerful niche of the masculine and the feminine principles that you've merged together, which has allowed a safe container, a strong container to be built so that people can truly heal within it. Because I think a part of the issues where there's re-traumatization within these fields is that there's a lack of education or the safety of the container of the individuals that are facilitating, more so to make an income, less so actually to be able to support or create spaces for healing. And so this is just so important in the wellness, in the medicine space, in the drug space, that there is a merging of the two, which is the eagle and the condor, the masculine and the feminine principles are merging together. And I think that you're a really beautiful balance of the two pieces. And so I want to also acknowledge, the family that you came from and your father for bringing in that masculine side within it, and also your feminine softening him, while also simultaneously the devotion and the honoring and the reverence to your mother's life, and how even in her passing, there is medicine in her wake, and that you are carrying. So I want to acknowledge that too, and just like really grateful for the work that you have devoted yourself to in honoring of her, and for her giving life to you and you giving life to her ultimately in the reciprocity that you are doing. So it is such a gift to receive your wisdom and your devotional path, and this will resonate with some, and it may resonate with others, may not resonate with others, but ultimately that's okay. And what it is it takes courage to share publicly one's path and what one believes in, and acknowledging that it can never actually resonate with everyone. It means it's actually not doing something right. Like it's here to actually just be an extension of your truth, and your truth will find the right people, and I trust that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so grateful for your presence. I'm going to ask you one final question.
Yeah.
And this usually puts people on the spot.
Oh gosh.
So
getting ready.
Here we go. If this microphone was connected to all televisions, all radio stations, all networks around the world, and you could interrupt everyone's programming for 30 seconds.
Oh my goodness.
And you had a message to deliver. And you can take a moment to like tune into what that message is. What would you say?
Your life is a beautiful gift to unwrap. You have the courage to go where you need to go, to live the life that is meant for you to live. You can feel everything. It's safe. It's safe to feel. You can find the spaces and the places. Go feel. Go like kiss the sky and dance and like scream and do whatever it is that you need to do to welcome the life that's inside of you.
So you just started speaking. I got like emotional. So beautiful.
Feel your heart. Feel your heart. Like your heart. Feel your body, getting your body dance and move and shake and talk and say what you need to say, and take that like big leap off the diving board into the oceans of life. Let yourself get like thrown around in the waves and washed up on the shore. This is it. This is it. It's not a dress rehearsal, baby. Go out there.
Well, there's your permission to go live your life.
Go live it.
This incredible gift that we've been given to actually be human. And sometimes it's easy to forget that because of the amount of narrative that is taking us away from the divinity of our breath and our moment. And so that was a really beautiful reminder for us to just really, if we can, shift the lens into receiving the gift of what it truly means to be alive, to be human, and that we signed up for this. And so it's go time.
It's go time.
And it is, a responsibility to allow all of this to be completely irresistible. And that's our job, and our responsibility is to be able to chip away anything that is not feeding that.
Yeah, this is one giant planetary classroom. Let's be humble students and learn. Let's learn, and let's get our hands dirty. Let's get our faces dirty. Let's try.
Because there's nothing more psychedelic than being human.
Truly, the whole thing is one big trip.
It really is.
Birth till you die. And then you're probably still tripping on something else. I don't know what that is yet.
Layers.
I'll try it eventually.
Layers.
Woo!
Thank you for bringing your play and your wisdom and your education and your eloquence and your beauty and your grace to Deja Blu podcast. We will put all of your information in the show notes. Thank you so much, Laura, for being here. We love you.
Thank you. I love you so much. Thank you, everybody.
And to all of you beautiful humans out there, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Deja Blu. If you resonate with this information that has been shared today, if you feel like this could support somebody that is not necessarily connected in with the Deja Blu queendom that has been founded and built, then if it feels like your responsibility, then share it. Share it on your platform, share it on your social media, tag myself and Lauren Taus, Lauren.Taus on Instagram, and spread it with your network and your community, because your voice and your truth and your resonance really, really matters, and you can reach places that we cannot reach. And so we are sending you so much love and so much gratitude, and may this podcast support you in feeling empowered, giving you some more education and allowing yourself to soften into what is alive and recognizing your responsibility that you are here to truly cover a life by design. We're sending you so much love, and until next week, blessings.